Hello and welcome to Lift as We Rise, a podcast to inform purpose-driven strategies in business and sport. I am Roshni Gajjar, and today we have Momodou Ceesay on the show. He's talking to us from Ashford in the UK. Hello, Momodou.
Hello, Roshni.
It's a pleasure having you on the show.
It's my pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, so just to let our listeners in, Momodou and I were having a conversation earlier this week, which was so interesting. And I thought, you know what, Momodou, we should hop onto a podcast and share this because not only does it speak to STEM, but it speaks to different models of STEM and how that links to motorsport. So that's what we're chatting about today. Momodou, you're a mechanical engineer by profession, and also
Yes.
proudly the son of the African continent, and now you're working with Bright STEM Minds. Tell us a bit
Yes.
about your work at East Kent Colleges Group and what you're doing in the UK and Brazil.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So currently my role is Deputy Head of Engineering at Ashford College, which is part of the East Kent College Group. So this is on the southeastern coast of England, right? So right on the, basically very close to Dover. I've been in this position for 13 months. Beautiful story about this appointment is the college itself is linked to another college which falls under the remit of EKC, which is the college I went to back in 2002. So when the position came and I had the interview, great relationship with my line manager, the head of the department, and the principal, I popped down to Canterbury College just to say hello. And guess who was there? The dinner lady that served me over 20 years ago. So it was absolutely amazing to be able to come back. And then with my experience over the few years, voluntary and in industry as a mechanical engineer, passionate pedagogist and big on education, it was great to be back. So we overlook over 180 students that are currently on the level 2, level 3, and level 4 engineering pathway. So this is equivalent to like your old A levels.
So let's start there, Momodou. Education models are different around the world. And can you share with us how STEM, which is what we're talking about today, is positioned within the British education system? So to let the listeners in, what the discussion we were having with earlier this week was around Formula One in schools, and Momodou is a big advocate of that. And this is where the conversation around STEM comes in. So Momodou, bring us into what the level 2 means, etc., and how that fits into the education model as a whole.
So science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, sometimes STEAM, when you put the arts element into it, is an integral part of the UK educational system within the engineering framework. So at the top, you have the Engineering Council of the UK, and they have accredited institutions like the Institution of Mechanical Engineers, of which I'm a chartered member, and the Institution of Engineering Technology. And what they have, these, accredited bodies, like, and the Department for Education in the UK, are trying to fill the skill gap within certain markets in the industry, the niche markets, whether you want to be, for example, be into aerospace or some sort of specific mechanical engineering related courses. And because they're realizing that the skill gap is getting low, i.e. the veterans, if you like, who were, proficient in some of these, in the use of specialist equipment, for example, the STEM element is to inspire post-16 learners, so primary, secondary, 15, 16, you do your GCSEs or what's known globally as the, or in some countries, as the international, which is level 2 here in the UK, try to get a lot of students to pursue STEM-related careers. So this will be, a mechanical engineering course, basic bench fitting, how to use computer numerical program, CNC, how to use a milling machine. So these are all specialist tools, right? And this is all fundamentals, by the way, fundamentals. And this all falls on the STEM, right? So in education, and my role with education management is to get as many students as you can, post 16 GCSEs, or 2 years for the level 3. And then once you succeed in these courses, right, you then a university degree, or even more popular, an apprenticeship with the companies that are already established to further train you. In other words, continuous professional development.
So Momodou, that's super interesting. You spoke about the exposure to CNC milling machines. And from a Formula One in schools perspective, that program looks at design, make, test, race. And in a university curriculum, I haven't come across a engineering module that includes that type of technical exposure. Take us a bit through that and how it's positioned in your education system.
That's a great question. I went through the university route, level 7 masters, and I concur with what you've said. I think it was only about a week's worth of basic milling machines, using the big machines to turn a aluminum block into, a machinable component. So that's what's lacking in the higher educational route, if you like, in terms of university. And that's that sort of gap that my role as deputy head of engineering within an FE college or further education environment, which is that gap between your GCSEs, post 16 learners to university. We and myself and many other colleagues, and my professions, my colleagues within the industry, other professionals, have realized. So if I can put into context, I'll put into context for you. I had a learner who is now currently a senior CNC machinist working for McLaren Formula One. A learner meaning I taught her when she was 16, apprentice, saw her through her whole journey where she did the level 2 or level 3. And then she did some work experience with a company, about 2 years, and then applied for a job at McLaren and got the job. And the reason she had the job, right? And she wouldn't mind me saying this, by the way, because to show you that you're gonna have some challenges in between. It's mandatory to have your English and maths. So English and maths are 2 of the biggest subjects that's required here, should you wish to pursue a level 3 and anything higher than that. Level 4 is HNC, High National Certificate, all the way to level 7, which is a master's, PhD, etc., is level 8. So she failed her level 2 English GCSEs 5 times. She just couldn't get through it because she was diagnosed. She had a diagnosis, which we were able to assist her with. But that didn't stop her. She still went through the apprenticeship route, gained her skills, the physical skills on site on how to put the G codes in, 3-axis CNC machine, and then run the simulation using a computer-aided design software, CAD, which again alludes to what you said with F1 in schools, Roshni. And then to cut a long story short, she's now the only female senior CNC machinist for McLaren, meaning she is manufacturing components for Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris. So do not be surprised. I tease her. I'm still in touch with her, by the way. I tease her. I'm like, you're the reason why McLaren are doing very well this year with Formula One. So her journey, and I have many examples like that, is an example on when the system does sort of kick in terms of, the learners following the trajectory, some few obstacles along the way, happens to every one of us, but you're still resilient to pursue this journey from post 16 to gaining your level 3 and having experience in between, right? This is where the STEM element comes in: science, technology, engineering, mathematics, right? And then from there, you can build your career.
Momodou, behind every successful man is a woman. And so, guys listening, if you are a Formula One fan, behind the success at McLaren, guess who's doing the modeling over there? So, Ceesay, thanks for sharing that story, because what it's highlighted is something you touched on, is that getting from aspiration to success is a journey of commitment. And the story I'm hearing is someone who has the passion and the tenacity and the commitment, despite the ups and downs, being a female, is where she is today. And kudos to the mentors and the educators, Momodou.
100%. Exactly that. Exactly that, Roshni. It's amazing. It really is amazing. And I mentioned to you I went to Brazil to do a STEM event, and I was able to video call her, and she was able to talk to some of the students, and I made sure I targeted some of the female students just so that she can inspire them that, hey, I was in your position 8 years ago. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, right? You just put your goals in place, ready to put the effort, and you never know.
You absolutely never know, but you've got to stick the road because there are uncertainties and you're not always sure where that road leads to. So that's a fascinating story. You mentioned Brazil. You have a soft spot for Brazil, as you shared with me. What are your observations around STEM in Brazil and the Brazil education system?
One word: passion. Just passion. So there's this organization called Ceesay, S-E-S-I. Can't remember what it stands for. It's Brazilian Portuguese. Fact, Brazilian Portuguese is different from normal Portuguese. I just thought I'd put it out there. Wow, Roshni, my first time going to Brazil for 11 days. F1 in Schools Brazil, thank you very much for the invite, and Ceesay. And the STEM element is, as if anyone from Brazil is hearing this, you have all the different states within Brazil, and every state has its own little model on their educational sort of system, right? I'm not sure of the details, so I won't speak about anything I don't know. But what I can tell you is all of those schools, or the schools that were selected for this major STEM event, which was the F1 in Schools, they all gathered in the capital, Brasilia. It also tied in with other STEM sort of initiatives around the world. So the first Lego League competition was there, which is the big one. F1 in Schools, obviously, and they had the robotics, the very popular robotics competition, another global STEM event. So they all gathered in one area. So you're talking about really established STEM programs, initiatives, right? The biggest, and we had I remember the numbers, over 8,000 visitors that came, okay, which was absolutely amazing. And every one of those competitions, all right, I was involved in F1 in School, but I had a chance to walk around and see what the other projects were doing, is the passion and the love that the students were able to exuberate. I mean, can you imagine somebody delivering a presentation, a PowerPoint presentation on, the design of the component, let's say the F1 in Schools car, and in the middle of the presentation they just start crying because they were so, overwhelmed by how far they made it to even stand in front of professionals like myself and my colleagues who also came from Brazil and present, ask questions, and get the feedback, and just basically network along the way. So I have so many examples. Passion for me is the key word between STEM itself in its various forms in Brazil and the recipients, if you like, the students that are involved in them.
Yeah, Mamadou, like you, I've been to Brazil a few times by choice. It's a country that I have a strong resonance with. And what struck me was everywhere I went to, even in the public transport systems, there were engineer type of people or scientist type of people, because I could see by the apparatus they pulled out of their bag. Soon as they got in somewhere and sat down, they take their work out and continue working. So that dedication, that commitment, and almost the spirit of excellence, but in the most humble way, really struck me. I think we've lost Mamadou for a
I'm sure you're
second.
looking to. I'm
You
really looking
back.
forward to going to Brazil again. I'm back. Yeah, I said I'm sure you're up in another visit to Brazil because I sure am. I told Sao Paulo, Rio as well. I think Sao Paulo is quite a metropolitan city. A lot of a lot of professionals within that. I heard, it's like it's an amazing city. I've told, and I had the chance to go to some of the schools in, one or two of the areas.
Excuse me to our listeners. So I'm also battling to hear Momodou, and it seemed like he's hopped off. Let's just give him a second to try and log back on.
Apologies for that. I think the internet sort of gave way. Can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly, Momodou. Welcome back.
Apologies for that. Apologies for that. I was saying about Sao Paulo and the school that I visited. There was a school I visited not far from Brasilia, and the students were showing me their 3D printers. Okay, not as advanced as some of the ones we have here. The Mark Forges or the StratAstute, which cost about anywhere from 20 to 30K. Just simple 3D printers using PLA and ABS, two plastic components. And again, it was just the excitement and the detail. So they couldn't all speak English. So I had a translator that was trying to translate some of the engineering terminology that the students were telling me. But you could see again in the school, it was a big public school, right? Not the safest areas, neighborhoods, but I still went because at the end of the day, the students want to achieve an education, right? And you could just see the passion. Like I remember I came and they welcomed me, right? Which was great. I met the principal. We walked around. She was showing me all the investment they're putting into the area. And then the students did a mini presentation for me. I remember when I went, I took some McLaren F1, one McLaren F1 and some gifts so I can give it to them, right? Just, because I was one of the first international, right, people from the African continent based in the UK, yes, that had visited this school. Never happened before. Never ever happened before. And this is obviously thanks to F1 in schools, etc., for inviting me to Brazil in the first place. But it was just that experience for them, completely surreal. And again, there was a lot of emphasis on, yes, they were doing physics, chemistry, and all the other basic subjects. But again, that passion for being involved in the STEM environment and competition was just, it was just really beautiful, Roshni. I've traveled to a couple of countries in the world, but Brazil is definitely in my top 5.
Momodou, you speak about the passion for STEM and education, I guess, in Brazil. What's it like in the UK?
In the UK, some of the areas, so in Ashford, right, the students we have, there is a big, like I said, and I mentioned this before, there's a big skills gap. So the UK is finding it difficult to recruit people within engineering, right? So if I'm to compare the students 16, 17 in Brazil, right, in the class setting, compared to my students here in the UK, and I'm just going to be brutally honest here, right? On a scale 1 to 10, 10 being extremely passionate, ready to learn, dedicated. This is in the context of my college that I'm in. Attendance, punctuality, things like that. Brazil, 10 plus, in my humble opinion, because there are some challenges here in the UK with some of the students. So I think some of the students that we have inherited, meaning post-COVID 2021, is still having a knock-on effect on some of the learners, right? We've noticed that, and there's been a survey about that. And what do I mean by that? Where you have a learner that was finishing year 11, year 10 before they did the GCSE, post-COVID 2021, and we know, how devastating that was for everyone globally. And then some of the students are being sort of put in environments now where they have to be a bit more independent. So school is different. Everything's regimented and structured more than it is in college where it's more independent, right? So it's sometimes, I know this is obviously not all of the students, but majority of the students, it is sometimes quite difficult to get them to really focus. Okay, so and you'll have some, you know, some few challenges with behavior. But like I said, it's not all of them. It's not all of them. So these are some of the things that we are, myself, coming in with my experience in Brazil. So for example, I had the Brazilian students deliver a presentation to my learners in a class, Zoom call, Teams call. And that was a bit of fresh air for some of my students here, where they could hear the experiences that the students in Brazil, you know, basically what a day of a 16-year-old, 17-year-old is like in Brazil, 18-year-old in terms of their shift. So for example, they were shocked to hear that the students in Brazil start their classes at 7 o'clock. This particular school I went to, 7 o'clock in the morning, they have to be in class, and they stay there till 5 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, and then Friday is a bit more flexible. Whereas here, they start at 9 o'clock and finish at 3 o'clock. So I remember one of the students questioned me about the time difference. And I said, this is all part of the discipline they have in Brazil, for example, or in that school I went to. So still some few obstacles to go through here, but you know, we're working on it. We're working on it in some of the schools here, or in my college in particular.
So, Momodou, thank you for sharing those insights. And I asked those questions because where we are in South Africa, and I'm using the F1 in schools as a playbook for what I've observed, is that the automotive industry is one of our largest industries and exporters in South Africa. The future, and I'd like to hear your views on the future of STEM in those types of industries. The interest that I've received is huge in terms of people who hear about F1 in schools and want to get involved. And when I confirm with them that it's not a program to help you get under the helmet, it's a program that prioritizes educational STEM, both the parents and the pupil check out of that conversation, and they'll go and find the money to try and get into racing, as expensive as it is. In our education system in South Africa, our education is split into basic education, which is school and high school, and then tertiary education falls under a higher education department within government. And then a few years ago, about 20 years ago, I might have got my years a little bit incorrect, but the education model changed. So within the higher education system, they prioritized university education and did away with the previous technikon colleges. So they did that via mergers of those types of institutions. So when I asked you earlier about the machine learning, and the craftsmanship, that type of education, that has been deprioritized, and it's almost got a stigma attached to it, which is not as well received and as aspirational as getting a university degree. Um, so from your perspective, you know, where do you see STEM going to in the future? And do you believe, using your context of UK, that STEM is appropriately positioned within school and higher education systems at this stage, or should we be doing more?
We definitely should be doing more. And some colleges here are doing more. So for example, the college that my son goes to, which is just down the road from where I live, they have a STEM block. You actually go into the college and you actually see in big capital letters, STEM block. Again, another way to just, whether it's a parents' open evening or future potential investors, that we are dedicating this whole ground floor workshop, first floor classroom towards STEM, right? So that's an example of a college trying to do more. Okay, we don't necessarily have a STEM block at Ashford College, but we have the machine shop downstairs with 2 3-axis CNC machines, 8 turret lathes, 2 turret lathes, 8 milling machines, and 8 manual turning kits as well. So the point you mentioned about the stigma behind, that sort of craftsmanship where the parents and their sons and daughters, right? We're trying to promote women in engineering. and then they'll rather pursue a university degree. We're finding a similar challenge in the UK, and this is why the FE sector, further education sector, where some colleges are changing their name to University College now, still under FE, but they're turning their name to University College so they can try and attract the students who don't want to pursue university or who start university and don't want to do it, want to do something else, can look at these particular routes where you can be a maintenance technician, or you can be a machinist, you can be a product design and development engineer, right? You could be an operational engineer. This is what we're really trying to do here, and these are some of the ideas I'm bringing to Ashford College so far. Again, going back to do more and where STEM is positioned, I think, you know, the sort of social projects, and I call it a very light social project, such as F1 in schools, they have even contacted one of the accredited bodies that issue the exams and the sort of assessments to be a registered, right? A registered sort of qualification that's embedded into the curriculum. So if you're doing your engineering, maths, electrical principles, right? What F1 in school does is using the Denford router and using Autodesk as one of the CAD softwares, computer-aided design, or ANSYS as the simulation, using an F1 in schools kind of project and embedding into the curriculum where the training provider, the college, with the tutor and the assessors can deliver this to that class of 20, 25 learners. Yeah. So these are ways that they are trying, and they have been doing this a lot. Now, it's not as popular as some of the other qualifications within the engineering curriculum, but F1 in schools have made an effort. Now, obviously, attracting the students to do the F1 in school as an additional program, right, where you're running your full academic year and the F1 in schools comes in and you have to tie that in separate. This is, again, where it gets exciting as well for the learners, because then they outside the classroom, they're doing something, there's something different. So it's interesting what you said about, you know, how they basically try to check out because they want to do a university degree. One of the surveys recently conducted in the UK, professional engineering under the IMechE, Institution of Mechanical Engineers, found that the UK skill gap is short. So I think they had an estimate by 2030, 2031. It was the skill gap, the engineering technicians, etc., that, you know, your sort of students and you know, your colleagues are involved in South Africa. Here in the UK, they're short by 126,000 people. So what that means is people who have been 20, 30 years, the veterans in these specialist skills, right, which are so much in need, they're going to retire very soon. Right? They're the veterans. They're going to be consultants very soon. How do you then get these guys to kind of fill in these gaps, right? And this is where we come in as, you know, educators. This is where companies come in, top companies that F1 in schools, you do very well, for example, using F1 in schools as an example. You then get a full scholarship if you're a top winner for the competition. It's only a small number, but at least you can then more or less be guaranteed a job within an automotive related career. Hopefully this is a way to attract some of the students, let's say here and globally, right? Yes, they do have a little caveat in it that you get a full scholarship at UCL. Okay, that's great. So they come to the university side of it, but the apprenticeship side, you have that experience, and then you do well in the competition, and you then work for these companies. It's only going to make you much, much stronger in your field. And referring back to Beth, I can share her first name, being the first female CNC machinist who didn't go through the university route. She's absolutely doing amazing. So there is a lot to do. There's a lot to do, Roshni, and I think it's our responsibility to continue to inspire the next generation, 100%.
Momodou, the career pathways. I mean, I'm not sure how much you know about South Africa, but unemployment and underemployment is one of the country's biggest sustainability risks. So there are circa, depending on the statistics, 30 to 40% of people unemployed in South Africa, which is a huge statistic. Maths and science pass rates at the moment are 30% for something like maths, which is critical in the space of STEM. In your field, what is the value proposition for industry to get involved and sponsor the programs that you are running?
Okay. So in terms of how we
It seems like Momodou's
I don't
sound
sorry
or
about that. Oh,
connection is a little bit on the low side, so please bear with us, listeners. Momodou?
can you hear me?
Perfectly.
Okay. Is that better now?
Perfect. Thanks.
Okay. Sorry. Can you just do me a favor and just repeat that question again?
Yeah, sure. So the value proposition for industries to get involved in the programs you're running, because in the context of South Africa, what I was saying is our unemployment is around 35 to 40%, depending
Okay.
on when you look at the statistics. And the other part is on the schooling side, the pass rate for maths and science is 30%, and maths and science are core to careers in STEM. So what compels industry to get involved in your programs?
Oh, that is a great question because I want to introduce the City and Guilds qualification known as the technical level. So City and Guilds are global, all over the world, EAL, but City and Guilds have introduced a new qualification again to get industries all over, not necessarily engineering, hairdressing, catering, but in the country and STEM, what we have introduced, and this is the first time this Ashford College, and we had a record 37 students, to give you some numbers. We had they've introduced this qualification for 2 years where they tell industry and students that the students can only enroll on this qualification if you, the companies, right, issue these students specifically 315 hours of industry training. So the
Wow,
industry
that's a
training
lot.
involves knowledge, yes, knowledge, skills, and behaviors, but it's across the 2 years. So if you think about the typical week that we have with our students, Monday to Wednesday, they're at college, 9 till 4, 3, learning, the core subjects, maths, electrical principles, workshop, right? The core skills we mentioned, the craftsmanship skills. And then Thursday or Friday, or Thursday and Friday, once we've established this relationship with the companies, they then go to the employer. And these are students that are 16, 17. Some of them have never had a job before in their lives, right? They've never even been the newspaper boy down the road to drop off newspaper to the neighbors, right? So throwing them in this environment, okay, so that they can build on their behaviors, communication skills, people skills, problem solving, how to sort of, presentation skills, how do you dress up to go to work? I have a statistic for you. We had 37 learners. Okay, we ended up with 32. 5 students wanted to do other careers. I can proudly say so far, 27 of them have secured an apprentice, not an apprenticeship. The word is not apprenticeship. It's called, what's the terminology again? It's basically industry work experience. And in this way, the companies, obviously, they were there once when they were in school. They're now giving an opportunity to these students. Yes, some of the behaviors of the students can be quite challenging, meaning they give them tasks, and because the learners have never been in these types of environments, they sometimes don't deliver, works to deadline. But this is all part of the training process, right? For 2 years. And a great story was we actually had one employer. They've been established in the UK since 1900, so very ancient, but very established small medium enterprise. And they were so impressed with the learner's work ethic that they actually said that as soon as he completes this work experience, they wanted to look at sponsoring him to do a degree apprenticeship. So the degree apprenticeship is where, once you finish at level 3, the companies are then going to sponsor your degree. So imagine this. You don't have to take out £20,000 a year to pay for your 3-year university. You have a company in line with the Department for Education, which is the government sort of body here, to then make sure the student doesn't pay a penny for the degree for 3 years. Yes, he's locked into the contract with the employer. He gets paid, so he gets some employment, all right? And 1 day a week across that sort of academic year, per year, 32 weeks in a year, you have to go to your nearest training provider, which could be a college or university. So I think this has been a very smart way for, you know, companies, training providers, students, the economy, the communities, the employment statistics to at least have a bit of a positive impact, right? And I think a model like this or similar, we definitely need in our African countries. So you mentioned the automotive sector in South Africa, right? If Volkswagen, right, contacts the nearest established training provider in one of the centers is based in South Africa and says, listen, you know, we need to upgrade our workforce here. And we have the students, and, you know, there's always going to be exceptionally bright students that don't always get the opportunity. So if the educator is able to identify these students, push them and convince Volkswagen to take them on for work experience, right? They don't have to pay them, just to give him that environment. And then the government gets involved with the qualifications, etc. This will definitely have a positive impact on, like you said, the 30% statistic you've mentioned. It takes time, but it's all about implementing it.
Yeah, so I think in South Africa, some real good work is being done in the auto sector. There are very structured skills development programs and incentives to support that. What I heard from your account is that there seems to be a good cohesion between the academic institution, government bodies, and industry, and that triangulation really just nurtures this talent from potential to success, and that the commitment to that journey for me is critical. So, and you mentioned the 4-year time horizon. From a sponsorship perspective, you know, it is a long-term game, and post-COVID particularly, because I guess everyone was in survival mode for quite a while for understandable reasons. Um, the intention I find from corporates to commit to high potential STEM students from the time that talent is identified to kind of walking the journey to success with that particular individual or groups of individuals. That's perhaps something that requires a closer look, because without that cohesion, without that structured pathway, you know, the student or the pupil somehow loses their way along the path, especially when it comes to funding.
100%. And also as well, it's a good opportunity because at the end of the day, right, and this has always been my mantra, okay, in all the educational institutions I've worked with, the learners and the students come first, okay? So the learner can start this journey and then he or she will then realize, okay, this might not actually be for me, okay? Maybe let me do something else. Usually at that age, 16 to 19, they're still in that kind of decisive stage where, okay, daddy was a doctor, I'm also going to be a doctor. No, daddy was an engineer, I'm going to be an engineer. So if you expose the learners to these environments, right, it lets the learners discover whether this is their, this is their preference, right? So again, going back to, let's say, one of my Aston Martin apprentices, okay, he wasn't the sort of brightest when it came to the academic side of things, okay? But you put him in front of a machine and whether he got cuts and bruises, he will make sure that product is machined correctly, right? So what did we decide after the level 3? He had to achieve the level 3, that's mandatory. His colleagues went on to pursue the level 4 and the level 6, i.e. the bachelor's degree in engineering, because and this was around the time that the brand new Aston Martin DBX, the first 4x4, was being released. Okay, And also as well, for any James Bond fans, right, the Aston Martin Valkyrie was also being looked at behind the scenes with Adrian Newey, etc. I was very fortunate to be one of the first few to see that car when I went to Gaydon. I'm going to brag about it on your podcast, Roshni. Sorry about that.
You go
but
for it.
but it was amazing that this learner, after we, because one of my jobs is to become, it's a skills development coach. You do the reviews, you visit the learners, sit down with them. How is things at college? All right. How is things at work? Get the employees involved, etc., etc., etc. He didn't want to pursue the degree apprenticeship because he didn't want to do any further maths and calculus and integration. So we sat down with the apprenticeship trainer and we said, okay, we don't want this learner's journey to end, right? He's a valuable asset. He's spent 2-3 years with you. He's done a level 2 and a level 3. So like I said, level 2 is 1 year and level 3 is 2 years. And then the degree apprenticeship is about 3 years. Why don't you look at where this learner's strengths are and then just keep him on board, right? What are some of the vacancies there? And I remember, because it's Aston Martin, you have to dress smart and everything, yeah? He had a bit of a charm about himself, meaning the way he presented himself was a perfect candidate for an actual salesman. So they said, okay, Gaydon had a private suite where, those that, are keen on getting the latest Aston Martin Vantages, spending 3-5 million pounds, would have their cars customized. And it was amazing. After some discussions with the learner and the apprenticeship mentor, they decided to give him a shot. And I'll never remember the celebrity that came to see him. Gordon Ramsay, right? Hell's Kitchen,
Right.
the famous chef.
Yeah.
He came, he met this learner of mine. I wasn't there. I was told about this later, right? And they went into the room where they could pick the color of the car and the customizable seats, etc. And he sold the car to Gordon Ramsay. He made sure, he presented himself, he applied some of the engineering, again, going back to STEM, right? He applied some of the, engineering sort of principles, or talked about, this chassis is made out of aluminum, this is usually the heat resistivity, etc. Oh yeah, we use this particular software, and just some key technical terms that the audience, in this case, Gordon Ramsay, could comprehend, right? And then I went afterwards to visit because he also showed me what he did. We went into this nice place, which was very beautiful, by the way. And to cut a long story short, the learner is now still with Aston Martin, doing well as a salesman. Level 3, his colleagues have gone on to level 6, etc. That's fine. They have a high academic qualification, but again, where do your skill sets lie? Where does your knowledge, skill, and behavior fit you to start to mold your career and build on your CPD? So it's an amazing journey. I'm sure you've experienced this, Roshni, where you're able to see the learners' journeys from where they started to hopefully where they are at the moment. And when you sit and reflect, right? If there's anything I want anybody to remember from this podcast, is when you sit and reflect, whether you're in education or yourself who's gone through this educational journey, and see, wow, look at where I came from, where I am now. Okay, hopefully successful, whatever your definition of success is. It's a wonderful feeling. It's a breath of fresh air and a real satisfaction for me, anyway.
There's just so much in what you've shared. The first thing is you're talking about, apologizing for name dropping. And I think role models are a big thing. And on the African continent, particularly in South Africa, as much as everyone wants to see a race, an F1 race in South Africa at the famous Kyalami track, we don't have a South African with an F1 helmet. And that's long overdue. But there are, of course, South Africans doing amazing things within Formula One and other global motorsports that are unheard of. The other part, and yourself, sorry, before I move on, yourself being a person from Africa, from the African continent, and now developing and unlocking the potential in all these young learners so that they get those aspirational careers. That is something to aspire to. And then the third point that you mentioned is quite a nuanced one, but an important one, is that the foundation of the example that you mentioned may be STEM, i.e. engineering and machine learning. However, the career has now evolved into sales, into marketing. And so the work-related exposure is super critical to contextualize the studies that you are doing. It's not just about your hardcore technical knowledge and experience, how you present yourself, how you communicate, how you can read and interpret numbers, how you can work with teams. All that is quite important in shaping the success of your career, and textbooks cannot teach you that.
That's why they said experience cannot be bought. And that's why I'm also been following the Motorsports LinkedIn page in South Africa, which is great. We know that Naomi Schiff is a Sky Sports F1 presenter from South Africa, which is great. We know that Lewis Hamilton has visited South Africa, not South Africa, sorry, he's visited Africa. He's visited my home country, which, you don't even understand how happy I was, because again, I was happy to see this fantastic driver at Singapore last year, took some photos, and I said, you need to visit the African continent. That's all I told him. That's all I told him. And to follow him and seeing him doing that, and also pushing for motorsports in Africa, and so are the other F1 drivers as well. Max Verstappen mentioned that, that Formula One needs to come into the African continent, and they're looking into that. I understand F1 are in discussions with Rwanda at the moment, just to see how they can kind of pencil that in. Yes, there are going to be some challenges. Of course, there are going to be some challenges, right? It's the same thing they had in the Middle East, where they had to, administer that safely for all the visitors, etc. But it's breaking that barriers. So there are great things to come in the African continent, 100%. And to sort of touch back to what you said about, the skill set, the key term, transferable skills, right? That's what you want to do, transferable skills. What skills can you apply from your STEM sort of upbringing? I call it the STEM upbringing, and STEM cultivation, and STEM experience, and STEM learning, into something that might not be directly related to STEM, but it will build you as a person, as a character, as a professional in that industry that you have now discovered, right? It's your thing. So for me, out of all the careers, yes, doctors, lawyers, etc. Don't get me wrong. Of course, every person with their skill set. There's no better time to be in education. There's not even a better time to be within anything STEM related. It's been the best time I think I can remember since being involved in this in 2011. So again, to put it in context, 2017 there was a team, Tyro Racing, Formula One, that went to where the 2017 was in Malaysia or Thailand. I always keep forgetting. 2017, I think it was Malaysia. I may have this wrong, but anyway, I'm still in touch with those students, and the journey with them is they were in the primary competition when they were 13, 12, right, for the F1 primary in London. I'll never forget this. Got them into an engineering article. Fast forward to 2017, they then same group, won the UK championship, and then went to Malaysia then and won the best engineering car, which I remember was hand delivered by Total Wolff. Yes. And I remember, this is probably the best coincidence you could ever have. I had two Mercedes AMG F1 apprentices I was teaching at the time. And I remember going to visit them in Brackley, right, where they were making Lewis Hamilton 2017 winning car. And I remember one of the students' projects was actually designing the carbon fiber trophy, which was going to go to Total Wolff. You cannot make this up, right? And I have the email thread to confirm this, which was going to Mercedes, right? Or Total Wolff, right? Obviously, Brackley, UK, Malaysia. And then the students that I had kind of mentored and I kept a good relationship with were the ones that had that trophy. Sometimes you have these experiences in life. I guess you just say, yeah, this is a sign that I need to stick to this career, because you can't make that up. Because we were sitting in my class. So by then I was an assessor. So you had the Red Bull apprentices, I'm in touch with one of them. I could talk to you about Formula One any all day, Russian, as you probably know. So I had my Red Bull apprentices, Mercedes apprentices. Then there were Renault, now the Alpine apprentices, and the other SMEs, the other companies that make some of the components. And we were watching the actual F1 in schools world finals competition. And so here comes Toto Wolff giving the actual award, best engineering design. And my student was like, "Sir, I said, I know. That's the trophy. I remember when I came to see in Brackley, I said, this trophy you're making is for this competition, F1 in schools, because obviously the F1 companies are sponsors F1 in schools. So it's really beautiful, Roshni, about, the transferable skills I mentioned. And then now with the teams that I mentored in Brazil, when I went a couple of months ago, I got in touch with my colleagues from Tyro Racing 2017. I'm like, can you bring the old gang back? I'm going to schedule a Zoom call because I want you guys to share some experiences. Experience can't be bought. Share your experiences of where you are now with your careers. One of them is working for the National Physics Laboratory here in the UK, right? Which is great. And then just talk to them about your journey, right? And I've known you guys for 13 years now, right? Your careers are flourishing. Now, here comes this team from Brazil, three teams, Team Pocadores, Seven Speed, and Alpha. Let's just have an informal chat. Just give them some pointers so that when they go to the world finals in the next month, yes, they can, really up their game. So I'm looking forward to that meeting, which we penciled the first week of November. And again, for me, it's these things that just keep driving me to even be more of a passionate educationalist, and really inspire the next generation, more so our African students that are hopefully listening to this, right? That, the world is your oyster.
Momodou, the bright young STEM minds you are working with, the high potential candidates, what types of careers are they aspiring to and which industries are they targeting?
At the moment, it's mainly the maintenance side of sort of role within engineering. So maintenance technician, right? Where you become an eng tech. So it's very important to differentiate a technician from an engineer. Engineers don't like to be called technicians. Technicians love to be called engineers. But two different kind of skill set, if you like, or sort of like career building, if you like. But the maintenance side, it's a big one. Mechanical engineering, just generally, because within mechanical engineering comes so many other remits, right? You can be a CAD designer, product design and development engineer. You can be an operational technician, right? And then once you get your engineering status accredited by the Institution of Mechanical Engineers, you can then become an incorporated engineer. So these are some of the things that, these are mainly the careers at the moment that they sort of get into within the field of engineering. There's obviously the new ones I would probably say, which is the software development, and artificial AI engineer. That's relatively new to a lot of people now, still going through that. Where if you have a background in software engineering, right, C++, C hash, MATLAB, Multisim, etc., then you venture into this sort of career, if you like, using the CATIA software, for example, which most automotive industries use here in the UK and I think globally. JLR use that a lot. These are some of the careers as well that they're also sort of venturing into, which is new to me, I have to say. But we are, it's CPD. It's CPD as we're going along with the curriculum, with continuous training and attending seminars. These are that sector itself. It's something that there's a lot of potential. If you're already ahead of the game, stick to it. But for others that need to catch up, there's a lot of learning to do.
Now, we've already seen the impact of the transition into EVs and NEVs on industry and the shortage of skills, the high demand for software engineers, and the shortage of software engineers. So, my thinking is that futuristically, would automotive sector be a sector on its own? Would it fall into IT? or would it be kind of part of the broader type of transportation sector, which includes space, because our commercial space flights are also increasing? So, you know, STEM for me is an investment into the future. And in the story that you shared before, you know, those students of yours who made those trophies and designed the carbon fiber chassis, etc., who were instrumental in those processes and that product development, they were supported by the educator, and certainly the funding came from somewhere. And so, you know, the thinking is that the partnership between education, industry, government, and of course, parents play a part, because they're the key
One,
mentors at the home. What are your experiences in this regard?
so going back to what you said about EVs and hybrids and PHEVs, etc. So linking it back to STEM, right? And I think there is a South African team I came across. I'm trying to remember on the Formula Student. I don't know whether that's familiar to you. Formula Student. So Formula
Yes,
Student
it's
again.
sorry, just to explain, that's a program that's been running in South Africa for a while. So in
Good.
South Africa, we have tagged on to Formula Student so that there's a pathway from school to university. And South African universities have been supporting this program for quite a while with some good success, but understated.
100%. And again, linking it back to STEM, right? And obviously all the different kind of third-party contractors or first party, like you said, the parents, etc., crucial. So the Institution of Mechanical Engineers, again, right? Again, the system and having the infrastructure. So they have this Formula Student competition. And as you probably know from, I think it was last year or this year, they're introducing, I think they've already introduced their first autonomous vehicle. So before, it was petrol engines that sort of, were the university student, and it's really geared towards university, right? So again, a sector for university students to look into with if you're within a STEM sort of realm that, oh, I go to university, I can take part in Formula One in Formula Student. That's going to give me something great for my CV, right? So I remember I went to Silverstone last year, the year before, and they were going to introduce their first autonomous vehicles where the students, the software engineers and mechanical and etc., all butt heads together. The track was laid with the sensors that the vehicle had to basically follow, right? And the points, etc. And it was all pretty much remote controlled. So you're taking students out of sitting in a chassis driven where they had previous years the hybrid engines. So when hybrid was a big thing, Formula Student also got involved against them, right? And obviously before that was the petrol driven sort of engine. So that has been a big attraction, 100%. And that again only fosters and nurtures the learners and the students, right? To look at catching up with the times. Okay. All right. What have I learned at college, university, that I've now learned in the STEM initiative, Formula Student, that I can then take to this employer, Polestar, Tesla, some of the big industries there, and the Volkswagens and the Mercedes with their fully electric vehicles now, and then be part of this fantastic team to further develop this. So again, to give you an example, and to answer your question, my colleague of mine from Aston Martin, when they are now designing, because Aston Martin is old school, basically petrol heads like myself. I'm still a fossil fuel maniac, but obviously you got to catch up with the times. And to just to give an example of one student, and they're doing this across the workforce, obviously, he had to do a training course, a 1 week crash course, right? On basically the basic principles of electric vehicles, i.e. the engineering behind EVs, right? Because he was involved in the design of the I think it was the Vantage or one of the Aston Martin brands, I can't remember, which was a fully petrol driven car. But Aston Martin need to obviously catch up with the times, right? They're in Formula One, they got the hybrid engines, they need to look at future investments, etc. And again, going back to the infrastructure, so there's an institute that basically has specialists from industry that now in education. So they've learned everything they've learned way ahead of the game. They're now able to deliver, they talk about their experience and then deliver educational content within the specialist area, EVs, right? Learner goes through that sort of journey with the assessor or what they call skills development coach, and then is assessed an exam, multiple choice, and also different scenarios, passes it, gets his certificates, goes back to Aston Martin, and is able to the best of his ability, with experience over time, implement the knowledge that he's learned.
Right.
Right. So it's like again, having that system really does help where you don't have to spend, a couple of months in his case, okay? Because these are all continuous sort of courses, right? But at least it gives him now that what you like, the paperwork, if you like, for him to
Right.
go back to look into this research and development and again basically foster the further development. So it's really it's great that the companies are involved in this sector. The keyword sustainability, as we know, and again just on continuous continuous professional development within this specialist sector.
It reminds me of that Porsche ad, the stuff dreams are made of that little boy who gets on the bed and puts his Porsche poster up on the wall, and eventually lands up becoming, fast forward a few years later, and at the peak of his career, he gets his Porsche. So it all starts with a dream. Momodou, for corporates, for investors out there, those who want to attract the best STEM talent out there, what advice do you have for them?
Equal opportunities. Don't be hesitant to, explore talent wherever talent may come from, wherever talent may come from, and really provide a level playing field. Not saying that they're not already doing that, but I think it's very, very important that they have a holistic and a broad selection of their future talent, right? So I think it's important that they're listening to training providers. So, for example, one of my jobs, one of my duties is when we call him IL industry liaison officer. So his job is to go to companies and sell the courses that we provide for these students to actually go and in the future work for them to get the experience. So one of the challenges we face is, sending emails, no response, phone calls, no response, etc. So what do? We decided to invite some of these companies for lunch, a full catered buffet where we brought them into our training provider and treated them with some, a fantastic welcome, and then said, listen, these are the students, right? And these are some top companies within Ashford. I won't mention their names because I think once they got that official invitation, they were able to see the facilities with their eyes, the milling machines and lathes, etc. that I mentioned, look at the courses we offer, and then look at the pool of students. And we know that some of those students, yeah, some of them may be challenging, some of them don't have the basic skills like your existing workforce, but at least you providing that equal sort of level playing field for these applicants. In the future, it's going to take time, and they know this, obviously. You will then foster development, growth, commitment for some of the students, or even if they don't stay with you, you would have instilled and inspired in them to do something else that they really cherish. So I think for me is, all the corporates out there, all the, the big bosses. Yes, that first class 2-1 is great, 100%. That A grade is fantastic. It talks a lot about, it gives a lot about a learner, but there some students that maybe once you are able to get them out of their shell, right, they will really, really flourish, right? And I go back to, Beth, okay? And I'm happy to share this photo with you as well after the call, where she's standing there at 23, right? The only female out of 17 guys in the photo. And there's Lando Norris's car right in front. And they are the trophies that they've been winning and they're all just celebrating. But the most iconic thing about that photo is just Beth standing out there clearly as the only female. And then everyone else is the existing workforce. And it's such a powerful photo for me because I know Beth's journey in the past and what she had to overcome to come to where she is at the moment. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful story for her, which is just beginning for her fantastic career. So equal opportunities, level playing field, and just have an open mind to the applicants, whether they're coming from Brazil, right, South Africa, right, Oxford in the UK or whatever, equal opportunities for all applicants.
Yeah, and the world's a place where people are global citizens. So talent matters. And I think the British motor industry's also experienced it where their BEV talent has left the country. And in South Africa, we're experiencing very similar challenges. So how do you keep your talent? And from what I'm hearing, and it's something that we share, is about you've got to have a vision for that talent and nurture that vision. It takes time. I mean, any success story is about 20 years from the time the seed is planted to the time it harvests. Last question, because if you have really extended the time for this conversation with some good insight from yourself. Last question, Momodou, is a personal one for you. As a son of the African continent, what advice can you share to young, aspirant, bright minds on this continent to think big and to believe in their dreams?
Before I answer that question, I just want to go back to that previous question you asked and mention
Sure.
one point why I mentioned equal opportunities. And everybody knows this. And Google it if you haven't. Lewis Hamilton, Mission 44. That's all you have to remember. Mission 44 is all about that equal opportunities, where Sir Lewis Hamilton, under the guidance of the Royal Academy of Engineering and some amazing professionals, right, are, are giving that equal opportunities. And when I talk about equal opportunities, regardless of your color and your race and your background, right, and your gender, is literally giving equal opportunities for, in Lewis Hamilton's case, Sir Lewis Hamilton's case, to promote motorsports for individuals that don't always have the opportunity. So that's why Toto Wolff has been instrumental in this initiative with Lewis Hamilton. That's why when I saw him, I told him that I love what you're doing, and as a small fish in the background, I'm doing whatever I can as well to inspire the students there out there. So I just wanted to mention that and put that as a caveat to that question. And
Well,
coming back,
Momodu, let me help you bridge my original question to what you've just added. So
yeah,
that particular project, I had a close look at the documentation there, and it's not open to people outside of the UK, certainly not on the African continent.
yet.
So how do you
Yeah.
open up that pathway? Because we are not as vibrant as the UK is in terms of its motorsport industry, and the applied engineering technology that goes into that. Yet there's talent sitting on this continent. You mentioned Naomi Schaefer, the other person that what one hasn't heard of, and he's also working for the AMG Petronas partnership, is Shai Mafui. He comes from Johannesburg. And he's also gotten there. So it's absolutely possible. How did you make it, and what advice do you have for people on this continent?
Wow, the beautiful African continent. I think what's so unique about the African continent, which hopefully will answer this question, is everyone says pursue your dreams, etc. We all know that, right? Success. But I think the word that comes for me is resilience and being resilient, meaning the challenges that you may have, whatever the challenge may be, right? I'm from the Gambia, West Africa. Okay, I was a bit more fortunate because I had a good formal education and I was able to come to England, spend over 2 decades, get my necessary qualifications, build my career, etc., and be where I am at the moment. But there was a lot of resilience in my journey, and everybody's journey is going to be different. So I think um, hopping on that momentum that's out there, right? Don't be shy, for example, to, to branch out and get out of your shell, right? That's one, okay? Be resilient and be patient in those phone calls that you're making and maybe annoying the company or sending your CV a lot every time and you're not getting a response, or trying to apply for that grant because it's going to help you sort of cover some expenses that it's going to be difficult for you to do personally. Resilience. You have to be resilient. So I think for anyone listening to this, specifically from the African continent, okay, I would probably say just be resilient. And you mentioned it already, Roshni. Have your visions already, your goal that you want to sort of achieve. Okay. So if it's STEM, right, and it's Formula One, right, keep at it. Yes, you got to put in the work. Get that sort of in South Africa, get that education, like you said, the secondary education, get those mandatory English and math. So in the UK, English and math is the big thing. If you don't have a grade 5 and above, or what was a C before, it's all numbers now, right? You fail your level 2. You have to do it again. You have to do it again, right? This is sort of consistent amongst most of the FE colleges here. But you're gonna have to be resilient to then overcome that in order to then pursue what it is that you want to do. So for me, it's all about resilience, and you know what you want to do in life. You're going to have some challenges. There's going to be some challenges, of course. That's why it's called life, right? It's a sine wave, right? Ups and downs, peaks and troughs. Um, be that sort of consistent person in the middle, okay? And be resilient in whatever that you do. And now for me, is having a bit of a fun resilience, meaning, don't always be down when things don't go your way, right? So one of the things I like to bring, I think I'm trying to express it in this video podcast, is a bit of energy and positivity wherever I go, right? So you really bring that sort of enthusiasm with you, be yourself 100%. That's what happened to me in Singapore. And then I was able to be invited to Brazil because I was just myself, right? I went there and I said, how come I don't see any African teams? You have over 50, 60 teams. I don't see any African teams. I mentioned this to some top officials, right? And other officials within the FIA and Formula One. I told them straight up, where are the African teams? Look at where we are next year. First South African team, F1 in schools coming soon.
Momodou, thank you so, so much. And that is valuable advice. Be yourself. I'm going to add believe in yourself and stick on the journey. And parents, corporates, teachers, in Africa, we say, and I'm getting goosebumps as I say this, it takes a village to grow a child. And so it can't be done alone. And we need the support. So, Sir Lewis Hamilton, if you happen to be hearing this, the African continent has talent that requires opportunities. Momodou, thank you very, very much for sharing your insights. Listeners, if you stuck through this conversation, huge thanks to you for listening in today. As we say on Lift as we rise, so that together and with purpose, we can thrive. You can go and check out www.stratastute.ca. Oh, I'm not saying that well. www.stratastute.co.za to go and have a look at the more information on F1 in schools on the Future Ones page. And going back to what Momodou was saying earlier about resilience, they're also coaching program that supports resilience specifically for the next generation. So that's it for now. That's a wrap. We'll see you the next time. Take care and goodbye.